I did my project over the movie Little Miss Sunshine, and the character I chose is Frank Ginsberg. So his character, he had some recent life events and he was admitted to the hospital. And then soon after that, he had to go live with his sister and her family because he could not be left alone. And because of that, he's forced to tag along in this crazy, hectic road trip that they're all going on in order to get the daughter Olive to a beauty pageant called Little Miss Sunshine. The culture of the film is your typical American family. The environment is really chaotic because of the nature of Frank's family. The grandpa is an opinionated drug addict. The dad is one of those pyramid scheming businessmen. The son is on his ninth month of a vow of silence. He hasn't spoken one word in 9 months. And then the daughter, Olive, is convinced that she's going to win the Little Miss Sunshine beauty pageant. And she's the one who's making all of them go on a road trip from New Mexico to California. And then the mom is constantly just trying to hold everyone together and keep everything calm as it can be. So the disorder is major depressive disorder, and a lot of the symptoms include depressed mood, intense sadness, loss of pleasure and interest in activities, disturbance in appetite, disturbance in sleep patterns, feeling restless or sluggish, feeling worthless and guilty, fatigue, loss of energy, loss in ability and concentrate or thinking, and then reoccurring or constant thoughts about death or suicide. And these symptoms must be present for at least 2 weeks, and then the first two symptoms must be happening. So if Frank went to a therapist in the film, his diagnosis would be major depressive disorder, and this disorder may not be diagnosed in all cultures. Like in non-Western cultures, depression symptoms are usually measured somatically, which means that it's through physical symptoms, versus Western cultures like the US, symptoms are measured psychologically. So this would mean that in non-Western cultures, symptoms of depression could be shrugged off as something else, like feeling fatigue or headaches. Those could be brushed off as not being depression because they're symptoms that you could get, that anybody could get. So a diagnosis would be less likely to occur in those environments. And then one of the biggest stigmas around depression is that people with the disorder cannot lead a normal life. Leading a normal life could include things like not holding down a job, not being able to maintain long-lasting relationships, or not being able to keep up with other relationships like family and friends. So evidence of the disorder within Frank is his disturbance in appetite. Disturbance in appetite in general could be overeating or undereating, but in Frank's case, he was undereating, and then his thoughts slash actions on suicide because he attempted to commit suicide. So towards the beginning of the movie, the entire family is sitting at the table together. They're all eating dinner. And the whole entire time, Frank is just sitting there. He's observing everybody else and he's opening up and talking about his suicide attempt over the last couple weeks. But even after he's done talking, he just continues to scrape his plate with his fork and he just scoots the food around, but he never actually takes a bite. And then major life events like unreciprocated love from his grad student, losing his job, having to move to a hotel, and then losing a grant to the man who took away the love of his life, those all came together and caused Frank to decide to make his attempt of suicide. So the diathesis stress model is used to describe what Frank went through. The model states that major life stressors combined with genetic predispositions can cause a psychological disorder to be triggered out. And then depression runs in Frank's family, which is like the precursor. And then the stress is Frank's romantic interest not having the same feelings, getting fired from his job because of an emotional outrage, and watching Larry Sugarman, who's the man that took away the grad student from him, get the grant that he himself probably would have gotten otherwise, cause severe emotional drainage to Frank, therefore explaining why his depression was triggered. One symptom that Frank does not showcase in the film is psychomotor agitation. Psychomotor agitation is when physical movement and mental processes are slowed due to a psychological disorder. So that would be if his depression caused him to have like slow moving body movements and thought processes. But throughout the film, Frank never shows any symptoms of that. The treatment I would propose for Frank is to go on antidepressants while also going to cognitive behavioral therapy. This would be appropriate because the drugs, antidepressants, are used for biological causes of depression, and then the psychotherapy would be used for his psychological causes. And see, Frank had both because he was genetically predisposed to depression, and then he had all that trauma that triggered it out. The CBT would help Frank restructure the way he thinks and understand why his negative thoughts and behaviors from his stressors led him to believe his life was worth ending, and then the antidepressants would make him more stable as he worked his way through the CBT. An ethical concern for the antidepressants is that a psychiatrist or a pharmacologist could hold back on telling all the side effects and risks that come with SSRIs. And then an ethical concern for the therapy would be a power imbalance or violation of HIPAA laws. And then a situational barrier is Frank's family isn't the type to react well to therapy and getting help with mental illnesses. Richard, who is the dad, is the kind of guy to think that there's winners and losers, and Frank in this situation would be a loser because he gave up on his life. And then the grandpa, Edwin, belittled Frank by saying that he just decided to check out early instead of facing what he went through. Little Miss Sunshine gives an accurate portrayal of major depressive disorder, in my opinion, through the character of Frank. It shows that people who go through traumatic issues can develop hindered ways of thinking and viewing themselves and their purpose and their life. And then this influence helps us understand the disorder as viewers because it shows how mental health can sneak up on people. And the cliche, you never know what someone is going through, is a really real thing. Because while Frank was opening up about his experience, his sister, Cheryl, asked who Larry Sugarman was because she didn't even know, because Frank had kept that all bottled in. And that just shows that it makes things way worse, and it shows the seriousness of the severity of the disorder and how people might not realize how bad somebody is. And those are my references.